Hey everyone, I am back, ready to give you some more information on a topic that I think a lot of you have been waiting to hear about. As we're approaching Christmas, I thought it would be good to talk to you about the amazing Christmas present Arizona got from its voters when voters overwhelmingly voted to pass Prop 207. As most of you are probably already aware, Prop 207 is the proposition that addresses the legalization of marijuana for recreational use. Previously, marijuana had only been legalized for medical use, meaning you had to have a medical marijuana card in order to possess or use marijuana. However, even with that, there were a significant amount of problems that created a lot of additional criminal consequences, and it put a huge drain still on our criminal justice system. So, first point I want to make before I kind of break down the facts about Prop 207 and what it has done, the things that it's changed in relation to the criminal justice world. I want to address why this is good, not just for anyone who wants to smoke marijuana, but for Arizona as a whole. This is good for a number of reasons that are economically helpful to Arizona. The most obvious is that the proposition has language in it that requires funds from the sales of marijuana and from the fees and the taxes, those things, to be put towards education. So that's awesome. It's something great. We do need that in Arizona. It's always good to support teachers, to support education. In doing so, we support education. We get kids to be educated. The rates of criminal activity can go down with that. So that's helpful, any way that you look at it. But additionally, we have spent way too much money in our criminal justice system in investigating and prosecuting small level drug offenses, specifically marijuana. We have had huge incarceration rates related to marijuana usage, even though some will try and tell you that we don't incarcerate low level drug offenders. I can tell you we most certainly do, and that's expensive. And that includes people whose offense involves marijuana. While I will say that is at a much lower rate than other low-level drug offenders that we have. One of the things that I'd like to point out that you are likely not familiar with as to how the legalization of marijuana can help reallocate resources to places that they're really needed is to give you just kind of this example. When we only had the Medical Marijuana Act, the Arizona Medical Marijuana Act, what we were seeing an increase of was undercover operations in which law enforcement would go out and seek out individuals who were attempting to provide medical marijuana delivery services. They did these on the internet. They opened up websites, did it. They would all, in most of these instances, they all had their medical marijuana card. Many of them had medical marijuana caregiver cards, which authorized them to provide medical marijuana to other patients. But because of the major specifics in the law, what these individuals were doing that they thought was legal actually was not covered by the AMMA. Therefore, because marijuana was not legal outside of the AMMA, what we were finding is that police were setting up investigations, undercover investigations, in which they would contact these individuals who were asking them for medical marijuana cards. Police would provide fake medical marijuana cards that they had obtained that would check out to be real if they were checked out. In some cases, they would have a medical marijuana card that they manufactured, but then would have an expiration date that had just expired. They would then set up sales with these individuals, or deliveries rather, where the individuals would then go and provide the medical marijuana to this undercover officer who was posing as a medical marijuana patient. And they would do this on separate days, on over a course of several different days, typically 3. The reason they would do this over a period of time and more than just on one occasion is because in Arizona, when somebody commits a felony, each separate date of offense changes the category of that offender, even if this is just an ongoing activity, because they're separate dates of offense. That then potentially opens up this individual for mandatory prison time, which, as you can imagine, puts the state of Arizona in a very good negotiating position for plea agreements for these individuals who had previously never had any criminal background, hadn't had any criminal convictions, and their first criminal conviction comes with 3 to 4 separate dates of offense for delivering medical marijuana to someone they believe to be a medical marijuana patient. And so while they're doing things that they think are within the law, or should be within the law, they're actually not. They're committing high-level felonies, and then they're being popped for separate dates of offense, and they are looking at mandatory prison time. So we spent a lot of time with the AMA and money and resources with our police forces in finding, in investigating, setting up these undercover operations in order to get people who really, they're not what you would think of in the sense of drug dealers, yet we're setting them up to be facing long mandatory prison sentences, giving the county in which these offenses take place a huge upper hand in the ability to negotiate a plea that may have or may not have some prison or jail time, because the defendant is looking at really high prison incarceration if they were not to accept a plea. Those resources could have been used elsewhere. Okay, this is not what I would want my law enforcement to be investigating and spending the time working on. It would have been very simple for law enforcement, if they really felt this was a problem, to simply send letters, contact these individuals, and just say, hey, by the way, I looked at what you're doing. You're not within the guidelines of the AMA. You're not within that protection, and what you're doing would constitute a felony. We could arrest you, but we're giving you a warning. Not what they did. They didn't contact these people ahead of time. They instead set up these costly investigations in order to arrest and charge and potentially send to prison individuals who are not serious offenders. So now that we have changed the law, that hopefully will help limit how much law enforcement does that. But as I talk to you about what Prop 207 is, what's actually legal, and what, more importantly, is not legal, I'm going to explain to you also where there's still a potential that law enforcement could continue a similar course of action here with Prop 207, thereby also still wasting resources that could be used to investigate serious offenses. So let's get to it. Let's talk about what Prop 207 is. Let's talk about what it legalizes, what it opens up, and where there's still restrictions, and what other penalties you could potentially have.